Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM Channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. Tomorrow is the 4th of July, and it is the nation's annual celebration of freedom from British rule and tyranny. Well, tonight, we're talking about your personal freedom and how you can separate yourself from personal tyranny and the things that are ruling your life that shouldn't. My guests are Vicki Johnson, founder of Soul Wealth, and Reverend Dr. Robert Turner, pastor of Empowerment Temple AME Church in Baltimore, Maryland, and author of Creating a Culture of Repair. Hey, everyone.
Hello, how are you?
Yes, happy holiday week.
Happy holiday to you too.
So listen, before we even get into today's discussion, I would be remiss if I did not congratulate Dr. Vicki Johnson on, 14 years post kidney transplant operation?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yes, I was a donor. I'm a living kidney donor. Gave a kidney to my cousin in 2010, June 17th, 2010 to be exact. So I am 14 years post that experience, doing well, very grateful. My cousin is doing well. And I share it not only in celebration and gratitude, but also as an example and demonstration of an opportunity for how altruistic we can be for one another. You know, that we don't have to wait to die to donate an organ, specifically a kidney. And men and women, boys and girls that look like us, people of color, disproportionately are impacted by kidney disease. And so it was an opportunity to save a life, save two lives actually, because I was a living donor and am a living donor. Then the donor on the list, the registry, was able to get a kidney, you know, that would have gone to my cousin. So I actually, per my surgeon, you know, she said, you didn't just save one life, you saved two. And because you gave your cousin a kidney, somebody else has the opportunity now to receive a kidney from the donor registry list. So it's a blessing. Thank you for acknowledging it. And I will forever, you know, acknowledge.
Yeah, you know, that, and, you know, Reverend Turner, you know, Dr. Johnson and I, we go back a ways. And I wanted to make sure, I actually saw it when she posted it on social media, and it's, you know, she looks good. She said, you know, she feels good. And I'm just really, really glad that she was able to talk about that, because it's, you know, that was extremely, you know, that was extremely important to us. Let me start with you, Reverend Turner, about this issue regarding personal freedom. And I'm going to get in your business, which is, you are the pastor of a really large Christian flock. What do you struggle with personally, and what can you talk to us about, the things that you have to sit down with yourself and say, I need to exercise, you know, these issues, these personal freedoms for myself?
Yeah, that's a outstanding question. First of all, thank you for having me on this great show. Good to be back. Great to be back. And also with the doctor being a company, congratulations on your anniversary. That's really miraculous achievement to have that operation done and still be functioning and doing as very well as you are. And I pray God continues to keep you. What I think I heard your question correctly. I was asked, what is it that I personally have to really pray that I'm liberated from? Or...
Yeah. You know, when you talk about your own personal freedom, and these things may be going on in your life, and you know what, you need to declare your own sense of independence, just like this, you know, this country did with the British. You needed to to determine your own personal freedom, your own independence, about the things that you know are in your life that you need to change, to move away from. You know, how do you, and what are they, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think two things come to mind as a pastor, but really as a person. And it is, the process has already started, but it's more or less being liberated from having the opinions of other matter, right? To be liberated from caring what others think.
Ooh,
That's good.
You know, you know, as a child, you always want to, you know, get on the honor roll, and I was that honor roll student. High school, you know, college dean's list, president's list. And so when you are always looked at as, you know, that person, you know, you're used to getting certain accolades, to be quite honest. But the older you get, the more sometimes you realize that those accolades, as I tell preachers now in preaching training classes that I teach, those accolades and those amens can become a box. They can, people can box you in by complimenting you, you know, because you sometimes feel that you could allow those compliments to determine who you really are. And you're good at that because you're getting complimented for it. But every now and then in your life, you change, right? You hope we change for the better. And the things that you used to get commendations for, now they are things that you may or may not even be interested in doing anymore, or being anymore. And so that freedom, and then just to be free to be yourself, right? Sometimes because we're good at things, we think we're supposed to do them. And that's just not always the case. And doing things in the way in which we are called to do them versus the way in which others expect us to do them. And then the second thing that I'm praying to be liberated from, and am, is and it's kind of part and parcel of what I just mentioned, is not, and God's really blessed me with this because it's nothing but the grace of God, but being able to be okay with being misunderstood.
Oh my goodness.
wow.
You know,
Hold
man,
on, I need. Let me write that down. Oh my goodness.
you know, feel like you have to. I'm talking about myself. You asked about me. It used to be a point where I felt, and I still do, and I have to struggle with that. I struggle with that a lot. To feel like you have to explain yourself, because you think you're right, you know, and you want people to get the impression that you did it, or the motive you did it for, versus the perception they took from it. And sometimes we can spend a lot of hours running around in circles, especially with people who know we want to be understood. And sometimes folks will misunderstand you on purpose, to keep you there, to keep you trying to explain yourself. And they just throw things at you to get you to react because they know that's how they can keep you cornered in a certain argument or in a certain position.
We're gonna have to come back to that, because I need both of you all to drill down on that, being misunderstood and trying to free yourself of that. I mean, wow, can I do 2 hours today? But you know, but you know, Dr. Vicky, I want to ask you the same thing that I asked Dr. Turner. Personally, and this is getting in your business. Let me get in your business. When you think about the things that you need to be personally freed from, situations, people, circumstances, what are those things that you would want to be freed of today, or that you're working on freeing yourself from these things, and how do you do that?
Yeah, I agree with everything Dr. Turner said, because when you're on a journey to authenticity, you're going to be misunderstood. I played basketball, as you know, Harold, came to Howard on a basketball scholarship. So I understand the applause of the people, right? And being motivated by people's responses. And, those skills kind of they do transfer over into our lives as we get older and wiser. And you come to know, you know what, this is not what I want anymore. And so for me, the journey to liberation personally is about living in alignment with my core values, and our core values change over time. So if it's not in alignment with my top 3 core values, which is integrity, order, and peace, I can now quite easily step away from it and release the heaviness of living, choosing, being, so that everybody else will be okay. For a long time, that's how I operated and functioned, taking care of other people, making sure they were okay, and I'm left with fumes. Not anymore. So my journey to liberation is about, what do I need in this moment? Am I good? How do I want to feel? Is this in alignment with who I am? And if it's not, making different choices, because at every moment we live at choice. And so now choosing me first and making sure that my cup is filled, and then living, giving, serving, and loving other people from my overflow. That is what my practice is. My intention every day is to be free, from other people's expectations, and then just doing what I'm called to do. As Dr. Turner said, not just what I'm good at doing, but is this still the season for me to be doing that? Just because I can, am I supposed to? And a lot of times here lately, the answer is no. And I have to be okay with people not understanding my decision to do what's best for me.
But let me ask you this, Dr. Vicky, because you said something that really struck me. You said there was a time when you did not allow that, but you said now you're not doing it anymore. Was there an aha moment that you decided that you were going to address whatever these issues were regarding your personal freedom, or was this an evolution of who Dr. Vicky has now become?
It's both. It's both. It's an accelerated evolution, accelerated by the sudden death of 2 of my best friends within 6 months of each other.
Okay.
And those were 20 plus year relationships, each of them individually. And both of them passed away within 6 months of each other. Suddenly, they weren't sick or anything. One was a car accident. The other had a pulmonary embolism. And that, for me, I was already like living for Vicky post-transplant. But when I lost my 2 girlfriends, my 2 sister friends, sitting at their funerals, literally just staring at the casket, I was like, you know what? It's about me. Yeah. It's about me and what God has called me to do, who God has called me to be. And a lot of that means I am an outlier, even in ministry circles. I'm an ordained elder, have been for over 25 years. So even ministry looks different, because now a part of my assignment is helping other women walk in their liberation. Okay. And outside of the boxes that they have been put in over time. And in order to do that effectively, I had to go first.
Yeah. Hold on, because I do want to ask you about that. And we also need to talk about being misunderstood. And I got a whole lot of other questions. We're going to take a quick break, but don't forget, you can hear this in every edition of the Daily Drum Insight segment via podcast on WHUR.com. I'm Harold Fisher. The Original Quiet Storm with John Mons is next. That's on WHUR. We'll be back on Sirius XM channel 141 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our discussion about personal freedom and how you can separate yourself from personal tyranny and the things that are ruling your life that should not. This is our pre-4th of July conversation where, of course, the country will celebrate on the 4th its own freedom from British tyranny. Well, all of us have some form of unwelcome rule or tyranny in our lives. And we want to talk about how you address that. My guests are Dr. Vicki Johnson, founder of Soul Wealth, and Dr. Robert Turner, pastor of Empowerment Temple AME in Baltimore and author of Creating a Culture of Repair. So, Dr. Turner, before the break, you mentioned about being misunderstood and being comfortable with that. And here's the thing, and I'd like both of you to discuss this. At some point in our lives, we all have been misunderstood. And I would say being misunderstood, there's a difference between being misunderstood and being wrong. And sometimes people think that just because they don't understand what you're saying or feeling or doing, that they may think that you're wrong. But that isn't always the case. You can be misunderstood and be right, or the issue may, Dr. Turner, not be about being right or wrong. Am I on point here?
Mm-hmm. No, you absolutely are. There are times when either one are true, and there are times where both are true. I think that oftentimes when we're misunderstood, we become defensive, and we want to defend ourselves and our name, or our behavior, and we're doing this to people and for people that, in large part, may or may not even matter much in the large scheme of our life, and that to me determines growth. And sometimes, whether you're right or wrong, if you are trying to prove your correctiveness to a person that can only see your inaccuracies or inadequacies, then you're really wasting your time. And if you are wrong, you first need to understand that and forgive yourself. But there are some people who will never, ever be able to see beyond your error. And you have to be okay with that too. And you have to make sure that you don't allow moments to define your life. And if you are misunderstood, even if you're wrongly misunderstood, that's their problem, and the longer you sit there and you try to explain away whatever they're thinking, you're validating their statement or their perspective, their perception of you. And the best thing for you to do is, once you've stated what I've learned in my life is, once you state your stance and who you are and what you're about and what you did or did not do, even if you're right or wrong, you're the one who has to live with it, right? You have to live with you until you die, right?
Yeah.
And if you can live with you in your whatever right or wrong as you've done, that's all that matters. Because everybody else is complementary. You only live in your life, right?
Yeah.
Everybody else either comes in or goes out. Well, I did a sermon Sunday, quote scripture here, Psalms 138, I believe, verse 8. God will perfect that which concerns me. The Lord will perfect that which concerns me. I mean, everything that deals with me, God will perfect. There are things in our life that don't really deal with us, that doesn't even concern us, and those things will fall away. But everything that concerns me, God will perfect, God will complete, God will make whole. Oftentimes we want us to feel whole to things that are not concerning us, and God is not going to perfect it. God's not going to make you whole with something that doesn't concern you. When folks come and folks go, they obviously did not concern you, because whatever concerns you, the Lord will perfect.
Vicki, your thoughts on being misunderstood as it relates to your own personal, your freedom, your getting away from that personal tyranny that could be governing your life when you don't want it to be.
I was sitting here thinking in my head, I hear, all my life I had to fight.
Okay, Oprah. Come on with it, Oprah.
All my life, I have been misunderstood. I'm serious. I'm sitting here thinking and listening and reflecting. And even as a child, I was misunderstood. For me, learning to be comfortable being uncomfortable has become normal for me because I'm an introvert by nature. I'm extroverted when I have to be, when I'm speaking, serving out in public, in my career. But my personal nature is that of an introvert. So I have found the way for me to process being misunderstood is to really intensify my self-care and to be committed to taking care of me, my mental health, my emotional health, my spiritual well-being, my relational equity, leaning into what brings me joy, nourishing relationships, that have been supportive and consistent in my life. And that's how I have managed being misunderstood. It still happens to this day. But because I have learned, Job 22 is my favorite scripture, the Amplified version. It says, when you agree with God quickly, you will have peace and good will come to you. So while I'm, waiting on God to perfect those things that concern me, that was good, Dr. Turner, because it's in alignment with one of my other philosophies, which is mind your business.
Yes.
If it doesn't have anything to do with me, I am not going to insert myself. And that's how I protect my peace. And a part of protecting my peace frequently is minding my business because, that has nothing to do with me. That's big for me. As I age and become wiser, a way for me to maintain my liberation, my personal freedom, is to mind my business and to be clear. Clarity is a beautiful thing. To be clear, am I supposed to be involved in this? If I am, show me what to do. The serenity prayer, Lord, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That's how we can all, protect our peace. And no matter what, know that our steps are ordered and that everything is working for our good. So it's a personal journey and it takes courage to walk it out. Courage and patience, let me add. Courage and patience, because as we are being patient, that's how we mature and develop emotionally.
Let me talk about unhealthy situations. I've got some facts, some figures here. The National Coalition Against Domestic Violence says 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men experience intimate partner violence yearly. The National Center on Substance Abuse says 20 million Americans, 12 and older, 12 years old and older, are dealing with drug or alcohol abuse. The CDC says 45% of adults, 45%, that's nearly half of all Americans, are dealing with the weight problem. And obviously, those are all unhealthy situations, that personal tyranny that people are struggling to free themselves of. Dr. Vicki, I'll start with you. What do you believe are just some of the steps that can help people recognize that the relationship or the habit that they are in is unhealthy and needs to be ended?
I hear Harriet Tubman in my head.
We can go from Oprah to Harriet Tubman. Okay.
I could, and what she said, and I'm very serious, she said I could have freed a lot more people had they realized that they were in slavery. And a lot of times, and I know Dr. Turner can relate to this as a ministry leader, if people are not aware that they are in bondage, then it's really futile to show them the pathway to liberation. The first step is to become aware. Am I living God's best version, God's dream for me? If this is not the highest level best version of who I know that I can be, and there's more, I first have to recognize that before I can pivot and start taking steps. So I would say that the first step is to become aware. Am I living God's dream for me? And if I am not, what does it look like? Without a vision, we perish. So you got to have, an idea of your destination in order to get there. And unfortunately, we're so distracted as a country, as a community, as a culture. We're so distracted by things that don't matter, and we're overlooking and ignoring and or avoiding the things that are significant. So it's about generating awareness of your quality of life and knowing that it can be greater than it currently is. So for me, it's about becoming aware.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Turner, when you talk about removing yourself from people or situations, what's the difference between breaking up with a situation or person and breaking free of a situation or person?
But it's in the terminology. In really the preposition used, breaking up is typically when things go awry and
Blow up.
you blow up, you slashing tires, you putting rocks through windshields.
Yeah, no, we're not gonna do that.
Yeah, breakups are terrible. One or both persons' hearts have been broken or disappointed, hurt. People are blocked. The last one you mentioned, what was that phrase again? Breaking free. Somebody's heart may still be broken, but I think there's an acquiescence to the realization that this situation is futile, maybe even toxic. And while you may still love each other, you're realizing that in order for you to be your best self and for them to be their best, and when I say best, I'm not just talking about emotion. I'm talking all aspects of their life, to be really who they want to be. That's breaking free. It's more mutually beneficial. It may even still be one-sided led, because sometimes we will hang on to a dying corpse, if that's what we feel. If we're in love with it, right? And it's not doing anything for us, it's not going anywhere. But somebody has to realize, hey, I gotta take these shackles off, because this situation, and the person may be alive and vibrant, but as far as you all moving together, it's a dead corpse. And how do you know? Because you've said and you've done the same things over and over again. The only thing you can count on is that they are there. A dead corpse is there. But it's time for somebody to break free. It's time for the corpse to be buried or revived. Obviously you're not the one to revive them, and it's time for you to take the shackles off and go and live your most fulfilled life.
Yeah. And this is really for both of you, but I'll start with Dr. Vicky. Obviously, both of you are people of faith, Christians, as am I, but not everybody is.
Mm-hmm.
Some people may be of different faith. Some people may be of no faith. And I want to get to those folks in a bit, but for people of faith, particularly Christians, and Vicky, I know you've spoken to people who say, well, God told me that I need to break up with you. And then after you break up, then she hits the lottery. Well, God told me that you need to give me half of your lottery ticket. I say that tongue in cheek, but from a faith perspective, Dr. Vicky, how do you know that as a person of faith that what you are hearing is indeed the voice, the advice, the direction of God and not your imagination or some other malevolent presence that could be hanging around.
I don't think you do know until you do or you don't, right? Because when we make choices in alignment with I'll say God's will for our lives, there is a resultant fruit. There's fruit from it. There, are some experiences that God allows us to have because we need to learn the lessons. And I will say that if God gave you a message for me, it's not a surprise. It's already something I'm familiar with too, because God speaks to each of us through us, like really as us. God is in each of us, right? So we all have access to the wisdom of God in our lives individually. And again, I go back to Job 22, agree with God quickly so you can have peace. If you don't have peace, then it follows that you're not agreeing with God. Because the promise of God, when you agree with God, is that you have peace that surpasses all understanding. And not only that, one of my favorite scriptures, whether you're a Christian or not, it says, great peace have they that love the laws of God, and nothing shall offend thee. So when you're walking in ordered steps, you're a person that's not easily offended. And that speaks to liberation as well. When you're not attached to a lot of things or a lot of people or experiences, and you're walking in ordered steps, you have great peace. That's the promise of God to us. So if you're lacking peace, if you're filled with frustration, you're irritated all the time, there are some areas that need course correcting. And most of the time, we already know what that is. I say to people, I don't give advice. I don't give advice. You already know. Most of the time when people ask for advice, they already know. They just want somebody to blame if it doesn't work out. So I say, no, the people ask me a question. I'm like, what do you think?
Yeah.
I empower them. What do you think?
So Dr. Turner, same question. I mean, how do you know this is God speaking to you? If God says that I need to call my ex-girlfriend and tell her, now that you won the lottery, God said, I need to get half. Does that mean that if she says no and I'm still okay without half of her lottery ticket, does that mean that God says you're going to be all right, lottery ticket or not, lottery winnings or not?
Yeah, that's a great question. As humorous as it may sound, it is one of those that as pastor I get a lot. And what I immediately tell people is, first thing you must make sure you're hearing the voice of God. How do you know that? We hope that the Spirit of God speaks to us. And even as I modeled it with my sermon preparation, right? Whatever I think I'm hearing from the Lord, I must make sure I can back it up by scripture, right? So whatever you think you're hearing God say, can this be supported by what we actually know God has said in God's word? And secondly, typically, when God speaks to us, especially if we are doubting it, it's typically when we don't want to do it. I never heard anybody have to ask God if they should have some red velvet cake. Right. It's never been a question about, well, should I take this slice of red velvet cake or should I eat this double cheeseburger? No, you go, and then now after you may get diabetes and high cholesterol, you pray to God then to help you get relief from it. But we typically are wanting to hear the voice of God when we have a major decision we don't want to make. And sometimes we, like the doctor said, we want to kind of blame somebody. Well, God, you told me to do this. But the fact of the matter is, God is the one that if you had listened to him early on would have kept you out of being in this fork in the road. Now that you're kind of caught with your back against the wall and you got to fight your way through or go in the wall, now you want to say, well, God, you told me to do this. So I think that we must A, be honest about making sure we study our word. If we're trying to say God told us to do something, we need to make sure we know the word of God. And B, if it's something that you don't want to do and you feel this urge, always we call it in the church a conviction to do it, that's typically how you know it's definitely not you saying do it. It's somebody higher that's in your heart, in your mind, telling you, you know what, you probably need to go and apologize. Nobody wants to do that. You know what, you probably need to call this person that you may have done wrong 3 years ago. You know what, you probably need to not take that promotion, because that's going to take you away from your family and your children. You know, that those are the type of conversations, but we don't want to hear God say that. You know, we want to hear God say, go spend it, buy it, live it. Yes, 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 yes. And so sometimes we speak for God, and when God speaks something we don't want to hear, we say that's the enemy, or we say somebody's hating. And so that's how I've been able to manage and share with people. And even then, though, I never tell them this is what God's telling you to do, because they're not going to have me. They're not going to blame me for whatever decision they make. I just typically share that, you know, things that you want to do you wait on God to tell you to do them? No. Typically, things like if you want to go to Essence, if you want to go to a cruise next week, nobody's asking God, can I go to a cruise next week? We should, because, you know, Titanic cruise.
Oh my goodness.
We should, but we don't. We only ask God things about, should I have this surgery? Should I start doing whatever? And then we wait to hear back.
So for those who are without faith foundations and are fine with that, and when you're talking about, you know, secular issues and just kind of the day-to-day, Dr. Vicky, because we have situations, but we also have people, and I'm not necessarily talking about people with whom you may have a romantic relationship. It could be people that may be family, that may be toxic. You know, your Aunt Joyce, always, she just can't come to Thanksgiving. She can't come to 4th of July because her potato salad is awful. And you keep telling Aunt Joyce about that potato salad. We talked about Aunt Joyce yesterday in food safety on the show. But you know, when you're dealing with those kinds of toxic situations, that you love the person, but you've got to free yourself from that person. What is the process? I mean, do you have to steel yourself to do that? Because there are a lot of people who have toxic people in their lives that they absolutely love, but they're just not healthy for them.
Yeah, you don't have to be a martyr to save relationships. You do not.
Hey.
And there are some family relationships, including in my own family, that the relationships are not good for me. And so I can't do anything about us being related, but I can do something about proximity. Do I continue to put myself in situations where, you know, I'm being disrespected, being talked to any kind of way? For me, the answer is no. At one time, I felt obligated, you know, let me just tough it out. I don't tough it out anymore. And whether you have a relationship with God or not, you know what can give you an indication if this is good for you or not? Your body. You know, how do you feel in your body? What's happening with your nervous system? If your stomach hurts every time you come around this person, that's something for you to check in with. If you get a migraine,
that could be Aunt Joyce's potato salad.
It could be that.
If your stomach hurts every time you eat her potato salad, that's one thing. But please go ahead.
But even before, if it, you know, this is not a good thing for me, it's not a good situation for me, I choose, because it's not healthy for me. This is about liberation. What is best for me? not what's going to make everybody else be okay, because I've made years of decisions so that everybody else will be okay. And it does not serve me. So I've dialed that back to now say, before entering, dysfunctional, unhealthy, toxic situations, is this going to serve me? Do I absolutely have to be in this space? How do I feel about it? How do I want to feel about it? These are all questions that lend themselves to self-awareness. And that's why I said it's so important to check in with yourself. How do I want to feel? How do I feel? Does this give me a migraine headache? Is my heart racing? Do I wake up with anxiety? All of these are questions that give us answers and information. That's what I'm trying to say. It gives us guidance for what to do, because in every moment, especially adults, we get to choose. We get to choose. And if I am on a pathway of healing, healing is my responsibility. It's nobody else's responsibility to heal me. I have to make decisions and choices to be in situations around people or not that lend themselves to me feeling my best self, whatever that looks like, whoever it is.
Yeah. I have a couple of minutes left, and I want Dr. Turner to wrap up on this particular point. Dr. Turner, earlier in the conversation, you talked about being okay with being yourself, being your real self. Let us assume that your real self, not Dr. Turner, but anybody, that real self is not abusive, is not toxic, is not criminal, but that real self is good for you. But you still want to make sure that you are connected to people. Where is the balance? I'll give you a minute for that.
Yeah, I think when you're free to become yourself, you're free to allow others actually to become themselves. Margaret Mead poem kind of closely similar to that. The more I let my light shine, the more I actually allow others to feel free to let theirs shine also in my presence. And so that's, to me, is the balance. And really, a lot of our relationships that we have are counterfeit because we are not presenting our truest self. We're presenting an image, an avatar, a social media post. We're not presenting our real self. And once we allow people to see us for who we are, if we want to, well, you don't have to be friends with everybody. You don't have to be transparent with it. You don't have to be close with everybody. But those who you allow to be in your circle, in your sphere, in your life, on an intimate level, you should present your true self to them. And to everybody else, you should be you, but not be, because they don't know you fully, be okay with being misunderstood. Because they don't know you fully, they're not going to understand you fully. So, yeah. And we have to be okay with that, because in order for them to fully understand you, they have to fully know you, right? And you have to be selective in who you allow to fully know you. So we have to be okay with folks sometimes thinking we're the bad guy, sometimes thinking we are not whatever, because they don't really know us.
Yeah.
And truth be told, sometimes we don't know ourselves, right? I'm 41. I'm not the same person I was at 21, And so we're always evolving.
I think that's a good place to end this conversation. Reverend Dr. Robert Turner, Dr. Vicki Johnson, thank you all so much. I really appreciate this journey into personal freedom. Look, everyone have a wonderful 4th of July. Be safe. Don't eat too much. I appreciate your time. There you go. Joyce, stay home with the potato salad. That is the Daily Drum for this Wednesday, July 3rd. I'm Harold Fisher. Good night.